So we've got quite a full day today. I'll start with a bit of a company update in terms of comings and goings. I have my usual diversions just to provide some entertainment before we get into the meat. Talk a bit about where we're up to with GeoMaster for ArcGIS Pro. Not a lot of new content this year because our focus has been harvest management. Nevertheless, there is content that's worth bringing to your attention. Luke will do a session of ArcGIS Online and Portal, and he'll also pick up on cloud options and give some demonstrations of how that's going along. And some new features in GeoMaster, and Connor's going to take us through Harvest Manager, where we've got to with that, because that's about to be released at last. John's going to give us a spiel on FOLPI-XL, just to remind us where that sits in the scheme of things. Luke's going to come back doing GeoMaster Mobile and SilviQC and Yield Table Manager. And then we'll have a bit of a discussion on the road ahead and other things. So I'm not talking as much this year as I normally do. I'm handing it over to other people, which is a nice treat. Now, there's a lunchbox there, because somewhere amongst all that we'll be having lunch, which in our time will be around about 12:30 for 45 minutes. So those who are watching online, we'll put the front screen up with the clock so you know when it's 1:15. So in terms of comings and goings, we've had a few in the past year. Some of you who came last year will remember Kath. She was our office manager here in Rotorua. She was with us for a couple of years, and she has found another job somewhere else that suits her likings. And so we're delighted to have Sam. So Sam has just come and joined us a couple of weeks ago, not very long. So Sam, could I invite you just to just tell us a bit about probably best if you come into that. So just a bit about the background.
Yes, I've been brought on as the Rotorua manager, so nice to meet everybody and get to know the product and everything else. So I don't come from a technical background, so I'm potentially over the course of the next year going to be taking on some of the non-technical Atlas roles.
Sure.
So with being so new, can't give you too much about that, but yeah, my background is more on the HR and office management side of things, so I'm excited that I'll be moving into that area, and so I'm looking forward to hearing more about that list side of things and getting to know things. So nice to meet you all.
Thanks, Sam. The other reason Sam's with us is some of you will have dealt with Bree Shields, who does our Forest Levy Trust Management, and Sam will be stepping in the breach and holding that while Bree is away delivering a baby. Connor, you met last year, but he's still relatively new. Wherever he's gone, there he is. So he's been doing all our coding, so he sits in the back room, but made huge progress. So I'm looking forward to showing you what he's been up to in the last year and a bit. And our brand new entry is Guri. Guri's joined us just, in fact, yesterday was his first day, or the day before. We were looking for some more development capability, and Guri has some, particularly in the web area, that we're interested to going into. That's his background. So Guri, you want to come up and tell us a bit about yourself?
Morning, everyone. I'm Guri, and I've joined Integral as a solutions developer. Prior to this, I was working as a front-end developer in Taronga at GPSA. So yeah, I'm happy to join this team, and looking forward to working on some cool projects. Thank you. Thanks, Guri.
So yes, as I mentioned, I mean, it's been on our roadmap for some time to start bringing our products into a web interface, and we've had some interest in the industry to do that. And so we figured we'd better bring some skills on board that has that experience. He'll have to learn GeoMaster and translate that into web speak, but that's all part of the learning curve. In terms of communications, could we just really encourage you, when you want to get in touch with us, just to email software.support. One, because our phones are often with us when we're in meetings like this and with clients and things, and so it's not particularly helpful to have a phone call unless it's something really urgent. Secondly, some of us are down to 4-day weeks, and it's nice not to get called on a Friday if that's possible. It still happens, of course, but people forget. But if you email software.support, the other good thing is that all of us in the team get the email, which means if someone isn't there, someone else will pick it up, or the appropriate person just picks it up automatically. So by default, if at all possible, please email software.support. If it's an emergency, well, the phone will still work, but just use with discretion. So COVID more or less behind us, although that seems in the news still on a regular basis. There has been a lot more travel again. We were sort of quiet for a bit, so I've been out on the road quite a bit this past year. Travel has its perks and its quirks, and I thought I'll share some of those with you before we start off into the meeting. So at the beginning of the year, back in February, we had our usual GeoMaster User Meeting and training course. This was down in Mosgiel in the Manita's office. And Luke and I did that one, and then I also brought Elizabeth with me, my wife, so that we could spend some days doing some touring afterwards. So we went and checked out the Otago Peninsula. So while Rotorua was having a storm that day, we were enjoying peace and calm down in Otago. We thought while we're on the road, we'll just go a little bit further. This is Nugget Point. Those who've been down in the Catlins, look out from the lookout. A rather nice evening in that part of the world. And in the Catlins on the beaches, you will find sea lions. And we were in quite a remote spot for a couple of days. And these guys were particularly curious to see who was visiting their beach. But after a few minutes and the sun came out, they were much more interested in sunbathing. So after we toured the Catlins for a bit, we were back to Dunedin and then heading home. And while we're heading off to the airport, more or less, we looked up and there were these old fighter planes zooming past. And they put on quite a show for about 10 minutes. So one of my big projects for this year has been with Crown Forestry. They've picked up GeoMaster and they're collecting data from many of you in terms of managing their Crown Forest estate. And so Wellington has become a familiar scene. And it's not always cityscape. That was when I woke up in the morning. It was just a really nice morning in Wellington. That does happen. Nothing to do with work. I just thought it was a cool photo. So I went to Wingspan during this year and visited. Wingspan is a sanctuary for birds of prey here in Rotorua. And this is a local falcon, a Karearea by the name of Ribbon, who kept us entertained. And some unusual angles of Ribbon having some lunch. As I mentioned in the past, my main mode of transport is bicycle, and I ride from Nongataha here to our campus pretty much every day, and I ride along the lakefront. And this particularly misty morning, the guys were just getting their otter ready for another day's touring, and I just thought it made a nice scene on the lakefront there. It's a pretty ride. For those who haven't ridden it, this is just along the Sulphur Flats as you ride along. And there's bird life to stop and watch and enjoy. A couple of pied stilts here in the shallows. And then the ride home can also be quite pleasant. So all in all, generally the highlight of my day is getting to work and leaving again.
Just a bit in the middle.
Yeah. So another trip down to Dunedin, another training course, and this time flying over the central North Island. So that's Mount Ruapehu on a nice day, with Mount Taranaki in the distance. And for those who don't know, Ruapehu is in the middle of the North Island and Taranaki is way on the west coast. It's a huge distance, but on a clear day, quite spectacular. While I was down in, actually it wasn't there, it was Mosgiel, I stayed with a friend there, and he's quite keen on photography. And he's checking his phone. He says, oh, could be Southern Lights tonight, looking good. So we went out there with our woolly coats and our tripods. And it's not a great shot of the Southern Lights. It's not like the what you see out of Norway, but we've had recently just down there. But it's the first time I've ever seen them. But what's interesting, what I didn't know was when you look out to sea, you don't see that. You just see a fog. But when you put the camera up for 30 seconds, it picks up all the colors. So it's deceptive in that respect. I suspect in brighter places, it's more obvious. My friend's also a keen bird watcher. So we went out to the albatross colony down the bottom there of the Otago Peninsula. It's a little chick he's been keeping an eye on. But when they grow, this is Royal Albatross. They're huge. This guy's 3 meters wingspan. But curiously, just around the corner is where the penguins come in every evening. When they come in at sea, it's called a raft. And when they come on land, it's called a wattle of penguins. And these are the blue penguins, and these are, contrary to the albatross, the smallest of penguins. They're about 1 foot high. And this one's giving me a mean look. Again, nothing to do with work, but with the theme of sky. My son turned 21 this year. And for a gift, what he wanted was to do a parachute jump. So we headed down to Taupo. There he is, full of joy, and that's his dad sitting behind. And we fell our 15,000 feet and had a great day. Another trip to Wellington, another stunning day in the central North Island, Mount Ngauruhoe. Further around, Mount Ruapehu, which is the one we saw earlier on in that aerial shot. Again, not work, but I was out to Tiritimatangi, the island off Auckland there, where there's lots of bird life, and this is a bellbird. The word which just escapes me, Maori, but here it is, having a good song. And we have a native pigeon, Keriru, about to take off. Winging of a different kind. So this is 2 weeks ago. Luke and I went to Melbourne for Forest Tech. And as I came into land, I looked out the window and I saw this little panel flapping about a bit on the wing. So I took a photo and I went up to the cockpit. Well, at the end, as I was leaving the plane, I went to the hostess and said, look, this looks a bit dodgy. So you better go into the cockpit and talk to the pilot. So I went in the cockpit, talked to the pilot, doesn't look very good, took a photo of my photo, said they'd send it off to the engineers. Well and good, we'll see what happened there. Anyway, so we're in Melbourne for a couple of days doing Forest Tech. And it's always the architecture that strikes me when we're there. It's just really creative and eye-catching. So after a couple of days, I checked out, back to the airport, back on the plane. I happened to be sitting in seat 13A, which is the same one I was in last time when I came over. So when I sat down, I thought I should have a look out the window. Turns out that's the same plane. And they fixed my floating panel with duct tape. So when we got back from Australia, I met up with Elizabeth, my wife. It was our 30th wedding anniversary. So we went off and had a few days on Waiheke Island, had a nice break, and we got to meet some of the locals. Usual style. And so then last week, I was down in Wellington. I was providing more training, and the clients I was with suggested I should stay at the James Cook Hotel on the terrace because it was very convenient to their office. And when I checked in, they put me on the 22nd floor. So I thought, oh, awesome, should get some really cool photos. Yeah, well, the quirks of travel. So that's been how my year has gone in terms of side interest, shall we say. So back into the meat. GeoMaster ArcGIS Pro. This is pretty much same as what we showed you last year. There's a few new bits and pieces, but I'll just remind you for those who haven't got into the pro side of things, what it looks and feels like. How many people are using Pro now? About half, just over. Okay, cool. So it's pretty much fully there now from what was desktop. All the features that were significantly or majorly used are all there. There might be the odd side thing that no one ever even knew existed. So a few bits we didn't write. We figured, well, if anyone ever missed them, they'll let us know, and then we do them as well. But chances are a lot of stuff is what has gone under the bridge over 20 years, and there are things that people don't do anymore. So I didn't feel the need to replace everything. This thing can disappear on me. No. When you grab a window these days. Not there. Okay. Unhelpful. I'm just trying to move the window so I don't have that toolbar over the top. That's what I was trying to figure out. I'm sure the answer is yes, but how? You see something there? Hide floating meeting. Oh, yep, let's try that one. Okay. Now I've got my window back. Sweet. So, those familiar with Arc Pro or with Office tools where you're familiar with this, the idea of the ribbon, where we have different ribbons with different capabilities. And in this case, we've added a GeoMaster ribbon. And shortly, Connor will tell you about the Harvest Manager ribbon, which are the two new extensions we've added to Arc Pro. And then within the GeoMaster ribbon, it's pretty much all the tools you saw in ArcMap. So we'll click to the GeoMaster database. And then as before, you just need to, I think we might need to create a little map to show where to find things. But anyway, show events is nice and clean up the front. So we just click on a stand. It pulls up an event list as before. We can click on an event. We can create a map. Again, very much the same process you'll be familiar with. The difference is now that the map is not a separate application. It sits within Arc Pro and it actually has all the capability of an Arc Pro layout. So you have a lot more control over the map. You can add more layers. You can change what you want showing on the map. So what we have done is just added this toolbar here, which enables us.
Can't really see it on here. It just comes out as grey.
The map only comes out as grey?
Yeah, people online can't see it.
Oh, you're sharing the PowerPoint and not anything else.
And not the screen. Ah, thank you.
So you may wish to go back and start.
Stop sharing. Where are we? That's not us. No. Of course, maybe if I press escape, I'll get that. New share. How does that work? Let's try that one there. Share. Thank you, John.
Yep.
Looking better?
Yep.
So let's backtrack, as you say. We'll just close this briefly. Here's our GeoMaster map. I'm pulling up an event list. I'm pulling up an event on the event list as per normal. And we'll try and create the map as before. It'll be somewhere else this time. So we have the prescription coming up. Just click the button on the dialog. So this is for a pruning event, I think it was. So we should get a pruning prescription coming up in Word. Thinning, was it? Right. So usual stuff, stand details, information about the operation, in this case first thinning, whatever normally has to go on a thinning report, and then we should get the original picture I had up before, because this was the old document. It matters not, you get the concept. And there's my pruning. Fine. With the right map. So as before, we can update the emergency location if we want for an operation. So click on the button and say, well, there's a little spot there that I want, and that will update the coordinates in GeoMaster and on the map and in the prescription. New events. So select an area. You can do all the events as before. Luke's got some nice icons this time around. We can do a new assessment planner. So let's put on our assessment information. There might be some plots floating around. Maybe not, it doesn't really matter. So let's just select. So we've added to the GeoMaster ribbon, we've added some commonly used tools like select and zoom and clear. So you don't have to go to alternative windows for that. So there's a select tool. Select that area there. Pull up assessment planner. Copy to strata. And you have a 20 hectare area that's going to have plots put into it. And let's go plot per hectare. So we've got 0.04 hectare plots, and I would imagine that's going to be up to 20. That's a bit too fast. Let's try a new layout. It's certainly not as snappy as it is in that map, especially if you've got large selections, but it's still quite reasonable and faster than doing it by hand. Okay, and as before, we can move them around. Take that one out of the course. Save that one. Now we have to put a date in there. So this will create the assessment event in GeoMaster, and it'll create information to go take out in the field. So there's our assessment map, and then we have various options for saving that information. But that's not the right dialogue, is it, Luke?
We want to go.
I'll save it to GPX.
Yeah, that one.
That one there. So I can either go to SilviQC or GPX or just to a CSV. Heaps of other stuff as per normal. You can view attribute. So let's look at site index, for example, which is attribute patch. I only choose this because it's got some nice range of colors. Again, it's certainly slower in Pro than it is with that map. But anyway, here we have a site productivity map. So the green is growing well and the orange and red is not growing so well. Alternatively, you can have a layout of stands colored by stands, see where they are. And we'll just go back to patch classes per normal. Stand map, once again, what we're familiar with, just click on a stand. So I don't think it'll take anyone long to get used to this. If you're used to using an ArcMap map, it's pretty straightforward to transition. And then we have all the utilities that you're used to from the utilities menu. Patch locations, update records, disturbance mapping, where Colin's going to take you shortly, patch class, etc. So, any questions about what's happening in Pro here in terms of what you're used to? Pretty comfortable? So I've taken you through some of that stuff. I haven't done any editing as such, but it's all within the Pro way of doing things. And so at this point, I'll hand over to Luke. You can either close that GeoMaster or set it up, use it as you wish.
All right. Okay. ArcGIS Online and Portal. This is going to be a recap of pretty much what I said last year. GeoMaster for Arc Pro supports having feature layers from ArcGIS Online and Portal. Everything that works in either file geodatabase or enterprise geodatabases work on web-derived ArcGIS Online or Portal layers. When you're publishing your layer, you need to add a feature service. You need to make sure you add the config table. So GeoMaster knows how to get the config of that. So it knows the patch layer is called this and the link key is this and all of that sort of stuff. But it's something you have to explicitly do. ArcGIS Online, for those that don't know, is the Esri cloud offering. And Portal is your self-hosted version where you host it either in your data center, or you could host it in Azure or AWS or whatever. To have Portal yourself, you either need a ELA or a reasonable amount of money, I suspect. Traditionally used to be quite expensive to buy that yourself. And as I said, supports all the features. One thing we don't recommend you do is bulk updates, at least for your entire estate. Don't do an update patch records for everything at one go, because it'll take a very long time. One of our clients is looking at doing pretty much this, so hosting their stuff in Portal, but we suggest if you're doing update patch records or something, is they have a direct connect to the underlying enterprise geodatabase, so they can do bulk stuff as well. You obviously can't do that with ArcGIS Online, because Esri hides that away from you. Assessment Planner works as before, and could potentially be used as something you could feed field maps or Survey 123. We don't have any experience with using these tools. I'm sure you guys use this a lot more than we do, but something you can do. Right. We're getting a lot of interest from a good percentage of our customers on cloud options. Seems to be the way to go at the moment. And you can do local Arc Pro and have Portal or ArcGIS Online as giving you feature services. And then you could have a web-hosted GeoMaster database. We have some of our smaller players using it actively now. We have one of our larger customers actively investigating this, and I heard before the thing, he was quite impressed by the speed, talking to, I think it was the Sydney Azure data center. So when Christian and I were in Melbourne a few weeks back, it was really fast going from Melbourne to Sydney, quite impressively fast. In fact, we're here in New Zealand, we've got a delay because of the speed of light limitations going to Sydney, and so it's not quite so snappy, but usable. Another thing you can do is, and it's a lot more costly option, is to do a virtual desktop. So effectively what you have now, but hosted in one of the clouds, Azure or AWS. Much more expensive way of going about it, but does not suffer the delay issue. But yeah, if you can afford it, go for that. If you can't, see if the Portal or ArcGIS Online hosted thing with a database in the cloud works for you, but less performant, but a lot cheaper, a lot cheaper. Right, this is what you will have in your office probably right now. There'll be some variations. Some people use Citrix or terminal services, but what you've got is you've got GeoMaster and Arc Pro running on a machine, and in your server room you have a license server, GeoMaster database on SQL Server. If you're big, you'll have enterprise geodatabase or two running on SQL Server, and you'll have file geodatabases running on a file server. The minimalist way of going about this is to have your GeoMaster and Arc Pro running on desktop or laptop in your office, and in the cloud, either Azure, AWS, you'll have a license server running there, and that just needs to be one of the smallest virtual machines they have. Gig of RAM, even just running something like Windows 11 will get you by. I have one running, I think it chews about $25 a month just to have that there, handing out your licenses. And then you can either have another virtual machine running SQL Server, or do what I'm going to demo later and have something called SQL Azure. So we don't actually own or rent the virtual machine. We just have a connection to an Azure database, and that works quite well. The one I've got configured spins down after an hour of an inactivity because you pay for whatever you use. So if you're not using it, why pay? So when I demo this, there will be a delay on startup because it's spun down at the moment. And you could then have your feature services on ArcGIS Online, or if you can afford it, Portal. And some of our customers are doing this, and I don't like this idea, but they're using SharePoint to host file geodatabases. I think that's going to end in tears. Esri has some stuff on this, and they say you shouldn't really do it, but if you do, just don't edit directly to SharePoint. Just use that for synchronization. Zip your file geodatabase up and put it on SharePoint and synchronize it to another office. Don't do live editing on SharePoint of file geodatabases. And what another thing I'm going to demo in a moment is having your whole GeoMaster ArcGIS Pro and everything running in the cloud in a virtual desktop. It's the most performant, it's the most expensive. So
What do you mean with most expensive?
I chewed through $250. I get $250 because we're a Microsoft partner for Azure every month, and I chewed through that in a week and a half. I was experimenting, and I did not have access to a virtual machine with a GPU, so I had to give it a whole pile of cores to get some performance out of it. And that was just for one person running it minimally, so it's expensive.
We've got a question here from Lindsay Ray. I think he's FPC.
Here's FPC, yeah.
Yeah, he was wondering if there's any more documentation on GeoMaster Online integration.
No, I will write that in the new year. Right, my first thing I'm going to show you, Windows D, is I'm going to remote desktop into my work machine because the firewall here is blocking my SQL connection.
So we dialed through your machine.
Yeah, I'm connecting to my machine at work. This works. Worked the other day. Oh, yep. Yay. Okay. So what we have here is a blank Arc Pro project. I'm going to go to Catalog, Portal, and there is a feature service I've published in ArcGIS Online, and you will note the config table there. Just drag that in. And change the base map to something that's more relevant to
pretty good performance considering you're going through the desktop.
Oh, yeah. And that layers are coming from ArcGIS Online in the United States. So this is quite performant. You'll see on the refreshes, very good. Next, I'm going to connect to GeoMaster. Oh, actually, show you something. Configuration is a little bit different. When you configure your GeoMaster here, you'll just note that it's the actual layer number and then the layer name, just something to expect when you configure it, because that's how it's identified within ArcGIS web feature services. And this is writing the config back to the feature service, which takes a while, and I should have hit cancel. Well, while we're waiting for that, I'm just going to, oh, we're done. Connect. Right, so in Sydney, my GeoMaster database is spun down at the moment, and or I'm wrong and it's spun up. Oh, well, that's good. Okay. If first connection of the day, this would have timed out while it was waiting for the connection. It has not spun down since I touched it earlier in the day, so that was good. We have now, if you have a look, it's going to be hard for those here to see this, but it is connected to geomaster-cloud-sql.database.windows.net. Yeah, it's a mouthful. That's SQL Azure database in Sydney. Licenses, probably, whoops, wrong one. Licenses are also coming from, for those with really good eyesight, it's coming from a server and with an IP address that's coming off of out of a virtual machine running in Sydney as well, and there's your cloud. And everything that works with a local geodatabase and database works here. Just a bit slower. So it's gone and done a selection there. What you will notice is something like an event list will take quite a lot longer because it's having to pull a lot of stuff from across the wire from Sydney. And once that's popped up, I'll show you a way of speeding things up.
Just quickly, feature class and feature layers won't be created. That's one thing that will work differently.
Oh, true. Yes. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Yes. Connor's just pointing out there are limitations. You cannot create a feature class from here. It's something you're going to have to publish via the share ribbon. As you can see, though, that event lists a lot slower to bring up. If I ask for that again, it'll be instantaneous. The reason for that is GeoMaster's cached that. So if you know you're going to be working within a certain compartment today or something, you can go. Oh, the compartment doesn't have it. It's forest level. Okay. You can go. It's going to take a wee while to do this. Load forests. And what that's doing is pulling all of the forest information across, and that will work speedily once it's across, but it will take some minutes. So go and get a cup of coffee first thing in the morning after you've clicked this. And I should have picked a smaller forest.
This is where you would see that a virtual desktop would be a lot more effective.
Yes, I'll show that in a minute, but virtual desktops don't have any of these limitations, but this is just the delay of getting stuff across from Sydney. There is, I don't know what it is, maybe 50 millisecond delay, and that all adds up. And right, we're loaded. So now if we ask for an event list of somewhere we haven't clicked on before, instantaneous. So that's just a trick if you're using this. And pretty much everything that you could do, other than creating feature classes, works just the same way. Where's the assessment planner, Connor?
I got a question from Lindsay Ray.
Yes, hi Lindsay.
He was just asking, would loading the database to memory speed things up? It's just what looks.
I've just demonstrated that, and yes, it does.
To a refresh config.
Okay.
Give it a chance to show up to.
Okay, something new from Connor, refresh config. This forces a reload. Oh yes, this forces a reload of the configuration. Hadn't picked up that there was assessment layer loaded. It's now figured that out, and and 5 plots. Yeah, that's not bad. That'll be fast. Assessment planner creating assessments. It takes a while when saving to a data center outside New Zealand.
I got another question.
Yep.
Paul Harrison.
Yes.
He's FPC.
Yes. Yes.
Can you have multiple users editing GeoMaster and patch at the same time when the data is loaded into ArcGIS Online? That is, editing the patch layer.
I see no reason that would not work. So yes, we haven't explicitly gone out and tested that, but I see no reason why that wouldn't.
Katie says yes.
Oh, our clients say yes, it can be done. And surprisingly, maps run faster than using a local database, we find. So we don't know why this is, but I'll take that as a win. So that's what I've just demonstrated there, is a local ArcGIS Pro talking to cloud ArcGIS Online, a cloud database, and a cloud license server, all in Sydney, or in the case of ArcGIS Online in the States. Next demo. Right, this is a Azure virtual desktop, which is also was not running and is starting up at the moment. We've also used AWS workspaces. They work pretty much the same way. In fact, the AWS will actually spin down when you're inactive, where you actually have to, the Azure ones you have to manually stop. So, but of a benefit there, they will both just start on demand. So it'll take a minute or so to spin up.
We're back in Sydney.
We're in Sydney again. We're spinning up Windows 11 virtual machine, 8 cores, 32 gig of RAM, expensive. No GPU, because I don't have access to instances with a GPU, because I'm not paying Azure Microsoft money for this. Right, it's spun up. Ideally, a GPU would be the way to go. Arc Pro loves GPUs. Christian's laptop over here has a GPU and also Intel integrated graphics, and Pro uses both, and it flies. So looks just like an ordinary PC. The only difference is this is running in Sydney in a data center.
So when you close this virtual machine down,
Yep.
anything you've done and it stays there?
Yes.
It doesn't go, it doesn't wind back.
No, it's stateful.
So this is a desktop. Where's the database?
The database, I'll get there in a second. The database happens to be the same SQL as your database in the Sydney data center. I'm opening up just a file geodatabase at the moment. It could be enterprise geodatabase, could be ArcGIS Online, it could be Portal. There are lots of options you can do. So this is running in Sydney. And the main difference is speed. Instead of that 30-second delay, it's instantaneous to get an event list. Rendering is very good, even though I don't have a GPU. But what you will see is, as I zoom, there's a lot of CPU instead, because I've given it a lot of cores. And this is pretty much the same as running GeoMaster locally. What Christian was demoing before, but instead of being locally, it's in Sydney, it runs fast. And anything you can do locally, you can do here. So, yep.
This is similar to what we.
That's very similar to what you have. Yeah, you probably have shared instances, though, I think, don't you? Or
Yeah.
yes, yeah. A lot of clients are interested. I just wanted to show you. Interpine service runs pretty much like this. I won't demonstrate anything more than that. It's the same as being local. But more expensive. Right, I think you're up, Christian.
So that there isn't 3 or 4 pages of what's new in GeoMaster, as there have been in the past. That's sort of tapering off a bit because it's largely doing what people want it to do, and we're focusing on other things. But there are a few new things we've added. I'll speak to the first one, and then Connor will pick up the ones below that. And the stand export tool is, I suppose, answers an issue we've had over many years of getting data from one GeoMaster database to another GeoMaster database. And this was triggered primarily through our work with Crown Forest, because they were collecting data from 4 or 5 forest management companies and wanting to bring them all into a centralized database so they could see what those forestry companies were up to and how their estate was progressing. And so what this tool enables us to do is select a bunch of stands from your GeoMaster database, export them into basically a text file and a file geodatabase, and then you send that off to whoever's at the other end, and they just suck up the patches into their patch layer. And then in the toolbox, we've got an import tool that pulls those stands into that GeoMaster database. So I'll just run a demo of how that works. It's the caveats I should mention there is that it doesn't pull across all the area changing history. So we're not pulling through the splits or the area changes, all that history. We figured if you're a new owner, you don't need to know all that stuff that's happened in the past. That's just how you got to where you are now. So what you'll see, whatever the patches are now, they will assume to have been like that as if from day one. rather than all the history that you'll know about. So you're going to lose some historical area information when you move patch stands this way. For the purposes of Crown Forestry, that was fine because they just want a current state. And for most cases, depending on where the data is coming from, what you want to know is what is the state when I pick it up and go forward. It'll have all the events in the past, but it won't have all those area history changes. So I suppose where you might lose some detail is if a stand's got smaller, well, the events that come with it will carry the original area with them. You just don't know specifically where they were, if that's different from what the current area is now. So this works both in ArcPro and in ArcMap. So I'll just select a little area somewhere, grab a forest, and select everything. So I'm deciding that I'm going to export this particular forest for someone else's benefit. So go to Utilities, Export Selected Stands. It says there's some disconnect in the number of patches between GIS and GeoMaster, which happens in the real world, unfortunately. So you can either decide to go and sort that out and fix it, or say, well, we live with the fact there's some discrepancy here. So obviously there's some patches in the GeoMaster database that are not in GIS. So whether they were unlinked or for whatever reason, they're not presented, so they won't be coming through. And so now it's created a geodatabase. I'll explain the structure shortly. And then it's gone to GeoMaster and exported all the GeoMaster data to a .dat file, which is just a text file. And so within GeoMaster, within the configuration, so this is not required, but it's helpful if it's something that happens multiple times. Within the extraction format, we've added some new fields here. So this export group. So whatever group name you happen to have used for those forests, that'll get replaced with whatever name this is. So in the case of our friends at Crown Forestry, this identifies that you are Olsen's or New Zealand Forest Managers or Olsen Forest Manager or whoever the company is that's providing the data. So they will see that company name, not the original names that you were using to organize the data. So in your case, you might have called it Crown Forest because that's what you're managing. In their case, they will see that you are Olsen's because that's who it's coming from. And then you specify a folder where you want the data to go to, so it knows that automatically. If you don't do that, it'll just ask you, say, where do you want this data? So you don't need to do this stuff. This link key ID, this is fairly specific, but what we're trying to accommodate is the fact that there may be 3 or 4 companies that all have link key GM12345, all right? Now they have to be unique within a single database. Link keys have to be unique, so one patch goes to one polygon. And so for like putting a letter or a digit or something in there, what GeoMaster do is put that in the 3rd position of your link key, because typically you've got 2 characters and a whole lot of numbers. Usually the first number is 0, so no one cares. So when it exports the GIS data, it'll update all the link keys, put this extra character in. When it exports from GeoMaster, it does the same thing. So at the receiving end, if you bolt together 4 or 5 sets of data from different suppliers, they will all have unique link keys, even if they originally had GM12345 in each one. That'll no longer be the case. They'll be uniquely identified. But that's only to cope with a situation where you have multiple inputs. If you don't, leave it blank, then your link keys will stay the same as they were in the first place. They'll be the originals. Okay, so now if I go to GM Toolbox, and I connect to a different database, I've got a new one that's currently sitting empty. It doesn't need to be empty. I've just done that for today's purposes. Now, as you may be aware, with GM Toolbox, it sets up a whole lot of configuration when you first fire it up. If you change to another database, that configuration doesn't make sense because you're now in another database. So you just have to go through this rather tedious process of saving that you've gone to another one. It'll remember that. And so now we'll be in the new database and all the tabs will be back. So if I go to Utilities, fact, we could look at that database if you want to, because we'll do that shortly anyway. Select database. You'll see at the moment it's just a blank empty GeoMaster database. So go in here and under utilities in the toolbox, load GeoMaster database. Do you want to go into new? Yes, we do. Where do I look for it? It's in my stand export folder that I've configured. And sometimes I get this error and normally I don't, but today is a special day. So something may be there or not. We'll see how we go. Oh, well, even more special. The process is working. It has been working at Crown Forestry. It's just, I picked some data that was not as complete as it should have been. But you get the idea. And so this will make life easier for those of you who are moving data around. It just goes on a selection of stands. You don't have to select the whole forest. You can just select a particular area that you want to export. Someone else can import. And as long as you're happy with losing some of that historical area resolution, then you don't need to dial us in to help with that process. Okay. Well, that's any questions about that stand export import process?
Harrison.
Yep.
Do we have the opportunity to restructure the stands before importing the stands into the new database?
That's a good question. I hadn't anticipated that, but it depends how comfortable we are with the text editor.
Is it a CSV file?
It's not CSV, it is text, but it's sort of XML, but it's not pure XML. It's got other structures in it, and it's fairly specific for this purpose. I'm just trying to remember where I put that file. I think it was on temp. No. C drive. Stand exports. Edit with Notepad. So it starts off with, these are all the fields that are going to get pulled across. It needs to know which columns it's going to map. So crop fields and event fields and whatever else. Then we have all the lookup tables. So all the events and the stands that you're extracting, it needs to know what are the crews of those events, and what are the chemicals, and what are all the lookup values that you've got associated with those. So it doesn't pull through your entire lookup set. It just pulls through those that link to the stands that you've selected, so that when they import it, if you've already got chemical Roundup, well, then it says fine. If you haven't got it, it adds it to your lookup list, so that when you look at these events, they have all that context information. So that's what's sitting here.
How does it handle two roundups, an existing roundup and one coming from another client with Roundup?
Well, if it's got the same name, it'll say you've got it already. Okay. If it's got a different name, you spell it differently, well, you're going to get a new chemical. Okay. So some tidying up might be required. So this is all lookup table stuff that's coming through. And then we have a data section. So this is going right. I've got my forest. Within that, I have a compartment. Within that, I have a stand, and I have patches, end of patches. So if you wanted to get into here and change the stand names, you could do that. Because it is just pure text, but you just want to be familiar with what all those fields are. So that in the section at the beginning said these are all the fields, and the names, they correspond to all the fields that you see in the data here. So they describe the metadata. They're the metadata that describes what's being held in this section here. So it wasn't my intention that you should edit this, but it should be easy to access and check when there's a problem, because it is just raw data out of your database. So we don't have any editing tools for it, but I have made fixes in here. We've said, look, that lookup list thing didn't really work, so either fix or delete that line in order to get the import to work. So it's reasonably accessible from that perspective. And this is just a straight geodatabase that has the patch layer of those patches and link keys.
All these things.
Cool. Any other questions? Cool. Well, in that case, I'll hand over to Connor. Oh yeah, Eric.
Would you recommend before you import data to back up everything?
That is a very good idea, Eric. Yeah, do a backup. because you may find that it puts extra stuff in there that you don't want. And when you've done the backup, don't allow people to start editing before you've checked it, because otherwise you're going to lose their edits as well. So yes, backing up. And I think Connor's going to speak to backing up with even more passion very shortly due to experience. Right. Do you want me to close this one down, or are you?
Yeah. Make sure.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I need this. I need that.
Right. So I started out this year working on Harvest Manager, as many of you probably know. It's been a lot of my original focus for this year. And then partway through February, Cyclone Gabriel hit. And it destroyed a lot of forest. And so this was a problem for our clients who needed to now remap a lot of their GeoMaster data because they've lost thousands of hectares of forest and only partially destroyed a stand or a patch, and they'll need to go and readjust everything. So we were approached at first by PAMPAC to help with this remapping process and see if we could develop a tool for them. And that was where disturbance mapping came in. So for this is a normal forest. You see the patches in green. All the blue is destroyed land. So it'll be switched to non-productive. So I will start by just showing you disturbance mapping and giving a quick little run through of the wizard that I've developed to help with this process. Because manually remapping all of that will be a nightmare, and it will take a very, very long time. Just going to switch the geodatabase back as well. Okay, so under the utilities menu, there is a new separate, a new tool that is separately licensed. It's called disturbance mapping. When you click on it, you get this big scary warning. Please make sure to read it. It is very important because it will affect a large number of patches, and things can go wrong quite easily because you're doing bulk updates of thousands of records. So if one thing goes wrong, it's a bit of a snowball effect. Try to mitigate it as much as possible, but things happen.
Those out binoculars.
Yeah. So it basically tells you that it's going to affect a large amount of patches. It will take a very long time. It won't run over unstocked or planned patches. So anything unstocked, it'll just realize it's fine as it is. Backing up is strongly recommended because there is a good chance that you will lose data if something goes wrong. And it's also recommended to run compare areas beforehand. It does do its best to make sure that the areas match in GeoMaster and GIS beforehand, but it just saves extra calculation, makes it faster because it doesn't need to go and check. It just knows it is correct. So you start off with the wizard. You choose the layer that you've mapped, either by drone or manual or AI or something like that. You choose whether or not you want to load the GMDB into memory. For some people, this makes a major difference. Some people, loading it into memory, it does break things when you start doing large edits. So I added this option whether or not you want to. If you do, it'll force load it in for you. And then we have this filter that I made. So in it, you can choose, say, you only want to do damage type of wind damage.
So that's the filter only disturbance.
Yes, yes. So it'll only run over wind damage areas. and then you tell it what date you want to apply this event for, which is the patch split. And then you can choose whether you want to do just the patch splitting, or if you also want to set the NSA to 0. If you're going to set the NSA to 0, any planned events after the patch split date, after the area change date, will be removed. This is because if you have an event that affects the crop, and then you go and remove the crop, well, it needs to go and remove the event as well, otherwise it's going to be very unhappy.
What about the bits that's still around?
Yes, so the ones that are still stopped, they'll be fine. It'll still keep the event. It just disassociates the ones that are now unstopped. Yep, and then in the area change event, same thing. You choose the date. You can choose what type of area change it is. So we'll do wind damage. From here, you can either change the patch type or the patch class. We'll go and change it to non-productive. Wrong one. Yeah, and then you can set it to be uneconomic. Once you go to the end, it'll tell you everything you have selected so that you can view it again. If you want to get really fancy and start typing in your own filters, you can. For whatever reason, you want to start from the 1000th record. And it's completely fine to go and do custom SQL queries like that.
Is that filter line SQL based?
Yes. So if you know your way around well enough, you can custom type your own. You don't have to use the one I've built in that's just for ease of access if you don't know SQL and you still want to do filters.
So one time you might use that filters if you wanted to limit to one forest rather than doing the
or if you wanted to do it by damage type, so that way all the area changes that are applied have this one damage type. Yeah, and then once you hit confirm, I may as well start it. Won't do anything, I think. Oh, this is because if you use a shapefile, you'll get this field here. Shapefiles occasionally will have multiple area fields, and it's not sure which one to take. Because in this case, you can see how it says area underscore hectares, then shape underscore area. And it gets a bit confused about what it should take. So I just ask you, which one is it?
And is it just shape files you can use, or can you use other?
You can use shape files, anything from Flower Geodatabase, Enterprise. It'll accept pretty much anything. And if you see that it was very fast, this is just because the damage that I have didn't overlap any patches in the database. So it just skipped over everything.
How long does it normally take?
You don't want to know. It depends on the records. For about 1,000 records, for me, it takes about an hour and a half. For clients on on slower machines, it can take 5 to 10 hours. It depends quite drastically on your connection speed, your performance, your hardware.
How much damage?
Yeah, and how much damage and how intricate as well. If you have very tiny mapped polygons that are very precise, it has to think about it a bit more for what it's meant to do.
And should other people be editing at the same time?
They just keep bringing up these problems. No, so ideally you would do it when there's no one else editing. Multi-user editing is a problem in ArcMap, and that carried over to Pro. It's especially bad for something like this, where you're editing thousands of records in a very short amount of time. Because on average, it'll split a patch, apply about 4 events in GeoMaster sort of every 2 to 3 seconds. So it's quite fast, and it makes a lot of changes, and they're not small operations, so it gets messy quick. When you reach the end, you get this little output at the bottom telling you how long it took, how many patches it's split, how many it's created, how many events were added, and then you have this list of warning and error messages. These will get saved out at the end. So if you run into any errors and you're unable to fix them yourself, just send them through and you can have a look. And
That might be a case of restoring from the backup.
yes.
Fixing some stuff
Yeah.
and then having another go.
Yeah, in most cases it will be, if you get an error, it is a restore from backup.
So running overnight might be a good idea.
And
Um,
checking in the morning.
Yeah, running overnight, checking in the morning. I know some people have ran overnight, but still needed to be there to make sure in case they need to stop it. It has gotten a lot better at stopping on its own. I've made a lot of progress on that.
So what happens when someone takes the SQL Server database down?
Yeah, that's another problem. Yeah. Yeah,
I was going to ask, the license cost, or do you pay us to use it?
yeah, from the sounds of it. Yeah. No, I've gotten testimonials. It's saved, about a year of work and caused about 6 months of headaches. So I think it's a win.
Seriously, what is the license? It's about 1,500.
Yeah,
It's
about
not a
that.
big one. It's just acknowledges the amount of work he's put in.
Yeah.
That's what you're-
Yeah.
What else could you use this for, Connor?
You could potentially use it for cutover mapping. We haven't actually tested that yet. So rather than feeding it in a damage layer, you would feed it in your cutover layer. And you could filter it by cut date if you want. So you could have it only after a certain amount. And then it'll go and it'll split it and disestablish it essentially. The only thing you won't get is you won't get a clear file event.
Would you add a clear file event?
Wouldn't be a big deal. Behave the same as an area change. So
So how would you add the table event? You do some coding.
yeah, that would be on my end. If enough people are interested in it, then yeah, it'd be a good idea. Because I'm not sure how much work would be done for that.
If it falls over for some reason, external reason, like say that SQL Server database does go down.
Yeah.
Does it roll back changes that it's done, or
Not if the database
or
is
is it
down.
has it been committed up to that point?
It's transaction based. So each split and area change is sort of in its own transaction. So it'll do one lot, move on to the next, and it's all self-contained. So if it rolls back on its own, you're not rolling back thousands of changes. You're just rolling back the last one.
Rory says, this is Rory.
Yeah.
Using for cutover mapping is interesting. Could it not just establish patches and leave it as cutover?
You could. I'm assuming that he means that you would just have the clear file event and you wouldn't disestablish it fully into a land bank.
Yep. Is that what Rory says?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
options are, there are options to extend.
Yeah, there's options to extend it. And there's still more work to be done. Because whenever something happens, because bad data, people have had GeoMaster for so long that the data gets a bit cluttered, and running something like this is giving it a good thrashing. So there's more work to be done to make sure that nothing goes wrong.
It's time saving.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because this was created as something new for a specific event,
Yeah.
isn't it? So
Yeah.
you're always going to have issues that need to be resolved
Yeah.
because of that speed. And so the time saving, I don't think perhaps.
Yeah. That is the one major thing that I've heard from everyone on feedback is it causes headaches, but it saves them so much time and so much manual labor. And on plus side, it got them really good at repairing data, so less calls for me. So that is disturbance mapping. Completely forgotten what my next topic was. Right. So the next one is because everyone's hopefully starting to move from ArcMap to ArcPro. A lot of your old GIS maps that you use for stand maps or assessment maps will probably be a bit outdated, and you'll need to update them. And because some clients can have more maps than others, like Interfind, I've made a short little tool that will go and update these GIS maps for you and spit them out in the format that Pro knows about. And it will go and update all the placeholders and everything as well. Oh yeah, this is in the utilities menu as well. Anyone didn't catch it? So it accepts PAGX, which is the Pro version of a layout file. It accepts MXDs, and it also accepts Mac packages. it doesn't really care what you feed it. So I'm feeding it some maps that are already configured for Pro. I'm feeding it the base map that we use for training for MXD, which has no layout file stuff. And it's quite happy to go and tell you what's wrong with all of them. Yeah, and it will tell you that any placeholders that aren't surrounded by a % sign or square brackets won't be updated. It doesn't know how to differentiate. So say, because one of the placeholders is forest, but there may just be a label. It may not be where you actually want the data to go, and it can't differentiate. So rather than do that, I've just decided, no, you'll have to do that manually. Yeah, and it'll go and start updating all of these. It'll spit it back out in the same place that it was originally. And it'll just give it a new name with ArcGIS_Pro_ and then the original name. It does also tell you if you have no emergency location marker configured, because, well, some of our maps, they don't have the emergency location marker. So when you go to run the GIS maps, you won't see the emergency location. So this is just letting you know that it won't be displayed when you run this map because you don't have it. And it will spit out where it was, if there were changes made, if it was updated. Some of the ones that weren't, where no changes were made, were just the original training base map because it's not for GIS maps. I'll just show the map that was just configured. So this was just spit out by that tool.
So that was an MXD to start with?
Yeah, so this was an MXD to start with. And now it just behaves like a normal map. So if I can figure out how to. So where these values are, so for Benmore Peak, in the right next to where my mouse is, it says square bracket forest square bracket. So originally that would have been as the title. Yeah, so there's a name element and then there's a text element. In Arc Map, there's no backing field, so it's all just square bracket forest square bracket. There's no two parts. And when you import it into Arc Pro, it tries and spits it out with these now 2 variable places rather than 1. And because we're only looking at a different one than Arc Map was looking at, it'll end up causing some problems. So what the tool does is it'll go and change this name under options general name. And this is how we tell what fields need to be populated. Is there any questions on that one? Figure out what I'm trying to set up. Yeah, and then the next one, which I think I may have demoed last year. So I'm not sure if anyone's seen this little arrow symbol underneath the GeoMaster Connect before. It's been there for a little while now, but I don't think we've really showed it off. So if you open it, we have this new layout for project-specific settings. So you can choose a default location for your GIS maps. So if you have multiple ArcPro projects and they're all configured differently, you probably don't want to have to go and select the map every single time. This is just telling it, for this project, I'm going to use all these values. So you can configure them individually.
Can you just read some of those out?
So the top one is the default location. So if you have that specified, then this is the first place it'll look if you go to browse for a GIS map. Then there's the assessment map and compartment, stand, harvest area, setting, and operation map. So you can configure all of them. This is also where you can turn on GeoMaster Mobile tools. It also tells you what you have licensed currently.
And you're going to add disturbance mapping to
Yes, yes. I will add disturbance mapping to the list of what's currently licensed. And then there's the output folder. So when you go to export, say plots GPX or something, this is the default location that it'll go to. So if you have a place where you want everything to go to by default, you can still change it. It's just this is where it'll go to when it pops up a form asking where do you want to save it. And then the final thing is we have this enable debug mode, which is the next part that I'm going to talk about.
So you've got project-specific paths to a stand or assessment or operation map. Do you still have global locations if those aren't set?
Yes, yes, those are stored in the registry still. So it uses both. If you don't have the projects ones configured, it will use the registry. But if you have the project ones configured, it will use that instead. Yeah, and another way to get to it is just project options and then GeoMaster settings. Yep. And then you may have noticed when I turn on debug mode, I get this new diagnostics button. It's not overly complicated what it does. It just pops up, tells you what you have configured, some common things that can be wrong if you don't have a feature class that's registered as versioned, if you have multiple mappings in your config that are duplicated, some interesting metrics for us, I guess. If you have multiple setting layers, what type of geodatabase it is, if you have multiple ATLAS configs. It also lets you know all the assessments you have configured and if you have multiple in the same map. And then also it tells you Arc Pro version, license level, where your GeoMaster log's going to. Because before you connect to GeoMaster, it's actually logged in a different location. So it will tell you GeoMaster version, the GeoMaster database, and if you're the admin. You can also save this out and it will go and dump it as an Excel spreadsheet. So it is possible to give it to us if we end up asking. Yep.
Can you make yourself an admin?
No, so that's not editable. That would be a bit of a security flaw.
Be useful.
Yeah. Yeah, and then it just basically says the same sort of things in an Excel format, so we can sort of get some general information about more common problems. Most of the time you can tell just by looking at it if it's one of these things, but there have been times where I've found it is hard to tell. Sometimes the error message doesn't pop up or it's not specific. So this is just a little bit extra. Another feature of the debug mode, certain tools that use geoprocessing, like this is a good one. If you haven't seen this before, we have a deletions table. Pretty much just takes whatever the layer is, appends the word underscore deletions to it, and now any changes you make to the original will be changed into, will be archived in the deletions table. So if you have your patch layer, you go and delete a record, it'll move that record into the deletions table.
Is it just deletions that goes through?
Yes.
Edits as well?
Oh yeah, pretty much anything.
Okay.
So any changes, it'll pick up and it'll just move a copy into this other one. So if you split a patch, it'll go in there. If you merge it, it'll go in there.
Reshape.
Yep.
Okay.
It's replacing the archive table.
Sort of. The archive table only does it in certain circumstances. So if you use the merge, the split, it'll put it into the archive. Yeah, merge. If you do a merge, it'll put it in the archive table. Yeah, or a deactivate.
So still needed the
Yeah, so you do still need the archive. This is if you have a record or something and you just go and delete it in the table rather than using our tools.
You were showing.
Yes. Oh, and it went and hit itself. So when you have debug mode on, you get this nice little window where it's telling you what it's going to do if it's using geoprocessing tools. So there's a few places that can commonly fail. So at the very least, this shows you what is it trying to do. So this one's trying to create a new feature class called _deleted, wants to be the same and in the same coordinate system. And now it wants to go and add a new field saying when it was deleted, pretty much. And if you were to do that same thing with debug mode off, it would do it all silently. So this is just a way so that if something goes wrong, you can get at least a better view of why it went wrong.
Useful for doing rebuild boundaries, any chance, Brian?
Yes. I don't know if this will work. It was having. Yes, very much so. I was debugging the other day and I had some problems and I had to do a fix for rebuild boundaries. And this was actually how I managed to do that, so that I could see what was being stuffed in and figure out what was wrong and what I needed to change.
Just so I'm clear, back to that deletions thing.
Yep.
So you've got to pre-configure those layers, right? And you do that away somewhere first.
Yeah.
And then it'll just write those reports in there.
So it is only the configured fields that it's picking up.
Yeah.
And then you pretty much just select it, click on this little icon here, and it will go and create the table. And that's all you need to do. And then from that point on, anytime it makes a change, it'll start writing it back to that.
So it works on database triggers within the GIS. There's an on delete record trigger, and this response to that says like has copied the record into the deletions table before doing the delete.
Yeah, and a lot more things than you would think trigger the delete. Like a lot of the area reshapes, not all of them, but some of them can cause a delete to be triggered. I don't know if it's an error on their part or what it is, but it does pick up a lot of changes.
It'd be really handy too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the date deleted. I suggested to one of our clients who were using disturbance mapping as an easier way to put it back together if it failed, to use to create a patches deletion table. So every split that it did, it would move it into this table. So you just need to do a sideways copy and a rollback in GeoMaster, and you're good.
And how is that different from the Esri archive?
I have not actually used the Esri archive. This is an old tool that was in ArcMap that we had, but was never really explained or shown. So I would assume that it does work essentially the same, or similarly.
Basically, some people were doing some editing. One of our clients, they did a split, and the whole thing just disappeared, and they lost their records. They said, "Can you find us a rescue option?" So we said, "Well, we'll create tables that just holds on to the data, so that when catastrophe happens, you can recover from it."
Yeah.
It doesn't clear it out.
It just accumulates. Yeah. Imagine after disturbance mapping, it would be quite a chunky.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, it'd be quite large, somewhere in the range of 20 to 40,000 records.
So you said you can do a total rollback at the database, or you can
That's just a restore. Yeah.
We're reasonably well going through the program, and Connor is going to continue, but on a new theme, in this case, Harvest Manager, which has really been the bulk of what he's been responsible for this year and made some really good progress with. So with that, I'll hand over to you, Connor.
Okay, awesome. So right off the bat, you'll notice that there is now a Harvest Manager tab. So most of my year was spent adding all of these buttons here that you see. Quite a large amount. So pretty much everything that was an ArcMap is now an Arc Pro. So I'll start by using the strawberry tool, which has changed from strawberry to a pink square. It's opening up. So this is the new Harvest Area Designer. It's quite snazzy, I think.
If you say so yourself.
Yeah. Patting myself on the back here. No one else seems to. And so it works and behaves the same as ArcMap. So you can go and you can add a setting. So we'll add it from patch layout. You can save this new setting. Ignore that error or that warning. Oh, it doesn't seem to have added the new setting, I don't think. No, it hasn't. This is first. One second, technical difficulties. There we go, that seems better. Not ask me last time. There we go, now it's added. Let me see. I have a feeling I know why. There was a message box hidden. That's probably it. My guess as to why it didn't ask me to enter a setting ID. Yes, that still happens in ArcMap, in Arc Pro, where message boxes get hidden behind everything. So you can go, you can set the setting type, the operation, and the method, just like in ArcMap. And draw some cutover, choose your date. And then, I know this isn't realistic, I'm going to do it in the same without saving. You can go and map the cutover of what actually occurred. And then integrate it. I'll ask you, is this okay? And then there's a bit outside of the mapped area, so we can delete it. And save it. Yep, and so now it says it's cut 0.96 hectares out of 96.68. And you can see that in GeoMaster. So in total, it's cut that much across stand 2. You can also do harvest area map. This is another one of the maps that was exported out through the update map layout files. Yep. Then you can do a profile. Gives you a nice little lay of the track that you've just done and the slope that it's on. You can hide that if you don't want the towers and the cable.
That's a new feature because the ArcMap one didn't have tower cable.
I thought it had a line.
No, just they were
Oh.
different slopes. So we've added the ability to put in a tower height.
Yep, so you can adjust the height of the tower if you want. If you don't want any, you can type in 0. If you want to be weird, 150 meters. Yeah, I'm excited to see how this is going to turn out.
Oh yeah.
That's not that bad. That's pretty bad, but
What we don't, because of the handles, is the curve of the rope. And
yeah.
Applying a mass to that, so just straight line.
So that profile underneath there, it's just off the DU.
Yeah, so it's off of the DEM.
So basically what DEM do you use? It's just by default DEM or S3?
This is one that we use for training that Luke actually cooked up from. Where did you get the data from? From Lens?
That'll be a Lens one, but that'll be what S3's got. So
yeah.
I'd imagine going straight to the S3 one would produce the same result.
Yeah, I gave it a go using elevation layers instead. It was more accurate. It had a lot more issues though, I found. Yeah, and you can choose degrees or percent for the slope.
Is there something that you configure which
Yes, so this is just a little pick list here. And it'll pick up any
layers that you've got configured
that are in the map.
raster layers. And
Yeah.
you pick one of those is the DEM.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't try to slope layer that it's confused for a while.
Yep.
Up to 90.
Yeah. Yep, so you can save out that profile, saves it out as a PNG. You can also save it in GIS, which is done. It's this little brown line here. And if I manage to click on it, you can see that it's stored a link back to the photo, as well as the little image. Another thing you can do is you can do thinning harvests. That's linked to a thinning event, and rather than NSA going down, event progress just goes up.
I've got a question from Sarah. Connor, can DEM layer be sourced, be an image services from ArcGIS Online or client support?
We haven't tried that.
I don't see what
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I would think it'd be slower, but I don't see any reason it should fail. But again, we haven't tested
It'll
that.
just be done to file.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's a service.
Yeah, it'd be a service.
So you're just querying that service directly.
Pretty much. Yep, and then so skids and planned road, all the things you're normally used to. Set emergency locations. And that's pretty much most of the designer. Does everything else you think it would, that it normally does in ArcMap. Update harvest structures. I don't actually think there's anything that needs to be updated, so it'll be very, very fast.
You did that warning come about the skid not being within a distance.
Yes, within
So you
100
should be able
meters.
to configure that. If that's a recurring and irritating feature, then on the configuration form, you can adjust that the distance before that warning comes up.
Yeah. You can try it. It's doing stuff. I might, rather than wait for it to finish, I'll just kill it and show you that.
So not cancelable.
Nope. Well, it's not an ArcMap either, so consistency.
Didn't work then, so it shouldn't work now.
Exactly. And nothing if not reliable. Yep, so under in config, under harvest, under skid, you can set a warning distance. So if the skid is greater than that from the setting, it'll give you an error message, well, a warning message, and just let you know that your skid's really far away. Should be far enough away, I think, for me to not get that error. Warning. In my eyes, this the same thing. It's an annoying message box. Yeah. Well, that skid's really far away then. Well, you get the general idea. It'll adjust how far away it is before it'll complain. That's essentially it. It's a bit lackluster, to be honest, because there's nothing new in it or exciting. It's what you know, just nicer and prettier in Pro.
Is the good way to configure that dialogue? Our thinking is that perhaps our harvest managers will use that to design settings and skids and stuff, but we don't want to give them access to clear felling, stands and things like that.
What dialogue?
As a hub stereo designer.
Yeah.
I mean, what you would do is you manage permissions in those layers, and the layer will still be in the dialogue. They'll just get rejected if they try and do it.
Yeah, it does. It does check your permissions.
That's brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of whether there's some way.
Yeah.
You can
So
hide some of the buttons.
Yeah.
yeah,
That's an interesting question.
yeah. Well, it's pretty much if you go to click on this and you don't have permissions for it, it won't let you, sort of thing. The button's still there, but it does check if you can read and write to a layer before it will let you do it.
No, the original was pink.
Oh, the
original was pink. And the original icons, I think Colin Christian was somewhere, I don't remember where. Anyway, I sent a thing saying, is this pink enough for you? And I go, yes.
Oh yeah.
So we got toned down. This is the toned down thing.
Yeah. It was a nightmare. It was horrible. Imagine this, but 20 times more bright.
All right. Any questions about harvest management?
Yep. Yeah. Is the end?
Is it in the next release or is it like
yes.
coming out
Next week, probably.
Yeah. Next week, hopefully. Yes, absolutely. I had some notes, but I was unable to reproduce any of the errors that I've found. So in 3.2, it's quite common for you to get drawing errors. It basically just makes it so that all the layers that you have on the map just disappear. You can't see them. They're there. But and the fix is either a compact if you're on file or a compress if you're on enterprise, and it's all back happy. And that is the main concern. It happens a lot. I couldn't reproduce it and make a video for this. And this is on 3.1 as well.
Yeah, we deliberately targeted 3.1.
Yeah.
Issues at 3.2.
Yeah, that is the only issue I've found, is the drawing ones, but it is quite annoying of editing a feature, everything goes, you have to go and compress and then just keep going through that process, and it's not fun, not at all.
So is the solution to compress, or are you gonna?
We're hoping for easy fix.
Yes, because we can't really tell if it's gone.
Right.
We don't know if it's us, if it's something because we're doing things in the background,
yeah,
or what the actual cause is, but it seems like it'll have to be an Esri fix.
You've seen Esri community, other people?
Yeah, yeah, I have seen other people who've had this problem as well. So things like the assessment planner, I went to go and create plots one day and then everything just disappeared. Yeah, so it's not in a normal good spot like 3.1 was. 3.1 was quite nice.
Still is.
Yes, still is. It's not dead. Well, if there's nothing else, awesome. Switch back to the presentation. Just
put it through to
on that.
FOLPI. There we go. John, it's all yours. I took the big bearish.
Oh, I liked it. Well,
So yeah, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the FOLPI-XL state model that I built. I'm John, and I'm part of the Atlas GeoMaster team, but I'm one of the people in the team. In fact, I'm the only person in the team I think that doesn't really work on GeoMaster. So FOLPI-XL is one of my little babies, actually. So what do you click on here?
Oh, down.
Oh, down there. Oh, there. So yeah, I've just a bit of an outline of what I'm going to talk about. It's only going to be a 5-minute thing anyway. So what does FOLPI do? Where does it come from? Why us at Integral got developed this newer version, FOLPI-XL, why that happened, how it works, and what kind of reports and outputs that you can expect to see from it. So these are the kind of questions it helps answer. Should you buy new land? There's a whole bunch of them actually. Should you buy more forests, and what would their likely value be? What silviculture regimes you should impose on those areas? What kind of volume of wood you expect? What kind of log products you get out of it, and where you should assign them to? And should you be planting after clear felling? But probably the most common question asked and answered actually is from forest managers and especially from forest accountants is, what's the value of my forest estate? And this is kind of where FOLPI comes in. So yeah, it started back. The prototype was started back way back in the late 1970s. This is Oscar Garcia. He was one of the mensurationists up in the mensuration team at what was the Forest Research Institute back then. I used to wander up there on a Friday afternoon on my way to the library, usually because all new magazines came to the library on a Friday, and just have a bit of a chat with him, because he was a really interesting guy. He was from Chile, I think, originally. So yeah, I used to go up there and have a bit of a chat to him. Often when I walked in there, the sun would be streaming in his window because he had windows facing the west, and he'd be kicked back in his chair, and it almost, you could hear a little snore coming out because those rooms got so hot. But yeah, no, he was a good guy. So yeah, FOLPI uses operations research technique to optimize the harvesting over the crop. So it's a mathematical technique for getting the best harvest sequence out of your forest. Oscar used, well, back in those days in the 70s and 80s, we were using a mainframe that was based down in Wellington. So it was kind of a bizarre kind of mix of languages that we had that Oscar had written it in. But we, yeah, I was part of the team back in the 80s. I worked with Bruce Manley. He's the big honcho at School of Forestry, isn't he? Yeah. So this was us back then. That's Simon Paps on the left. That's Steve Wakelin in the middle. He's down with Sion in Wellington, and that's me. I'm still in Rotorua, and I work for Integral now. But back then, I don't know if you can see, but see, that was the Primo instant coffee. There was that red ribbon coffee. That was what we were into back then, sort of to keep us awake and pumping out the models. But I can remember one weekend, actually, one Easter weekend. Bruce's wife Helen was expecting their third baby, their third child, and we'd worked all through this Easter weekend valuing every different conservancy, New Zealand Forest Service Conservancy in New Zealand, trying to get a value on them, and we'd worked flat out on that. And Helen came in and she was just furious with Bruce because he'd spent the whole weekend at the office working on this stuff. Oh, yeah, that was kind of a fairly vivid memory of how you get into trouble. Yeah, so it was, we developed FOLPI in the 80s and 90s. Originally it was on a digital VAX machine after we ported it off the ICL down in Wellington. It was written in C and C++. Yeah, it was a pretty major thing. Then in the 90s, I think, with the PC revolution, everything that happened, everything got ported over so that it ran under MS-DOS. So it's basically a DOS app. It was actually a bunch of DOS apps, actually. Over the years, we had many requests to revive the system. It wasn't really worked on back in the Scion days because either just various political decisions, I think, and I think Bruce might have fallen out with the current CEO at Scion or something. I don't know what happened really, but we all kind of went our own ways, and the system got lost. But when we moved to Integral in 2014, we got a little bit of funding from MPI, Ministry of Primary Industries, and we thought, we could revive this model and just see if we can shoehorn it into an Excel spreadsheet and see if you could build a model that would be easier to use in a familiar environment for users that, most people know how to use Excel. Yeah, the casual user could just pick it up and use it. So that was pretty much the aim of the project back in 2014. Yeah, here we go. Simple, easy to use modeling system in the familiar Excel environment. So this is what the system looks like. Yeah, it uses the same basic formulation as what FOLPI had, what we had back in the 80s. So the formulation hasn't changed. We use, well, the way this works is that the Excel spreadsheet, the workbook, contains all the information about the forest estate, and it contains the problem specification, so like your constraints, what age you want to clear fells parts of the forest, what kind of volumes would you like to see out? Do you want non-declining yield? That kind of thing. All those constraints sit in that Excel workbook. And there's a couple of VBA macros in the workbook too. So you click a button and it fires up that controller application. The controller application goes back to the workbook, reads in all the data about the forest estate, all the data, and the problem specification. From that, it builds using Microsoft Solver Foundation. It builds a model, and it submits that model to a solver, the red box there, the LP Solve. So that solver's a public domain one. It's free. And clients love that there's no licensing fees with that. So what happens while it's solving is the controller application is getting status reports back from LP Solve, and at the same time it's writing those status reports back to a status table in the SQL Server database. And the workbook's polling that SQL Server database quite regularly. There's a polling interval, picking up that information. So as you're sitting in the Excel workbook, you can see the status of it solving, how it's getting on with it. There's a whole lot of status information that comes up. Once it's solved, within the workbook, there's some VBA macros that kick in, and they go off and generate report tables and stuff that are querying that SQL Server database for the solution. And yeah, that's the reports and the graphs are basically done automatically. As long as you've got a feasible, optimal solution. So it's a pretty cool little thing, actually. Oh, I love it. So the workbook's actually quite complicated. There's 14 sheets in it. So I thought that it would be better if we could color code the sheets, and then you'd know what area that you're in, kind of thing. You can navigate easier. So the orange one there is usually the workbook's the controller sheet. It's the workbook, that's part of the workbook that you sit in when you're solving, and it's got all the status updates, and it's got the big solve button in there too for kicking off the solving. The blue ones there are your problem definition. So in there is stuff like, your clear fell ages, if you're going to do replanting from what crop to what crop type, and all the other constraints that you might have, say, if you want to make sure that you're going to clear out a certain crop by a certain time, kind of thing, that would be in there too. So once it's solved, it generates another series of 5 solution sheets. A clear fell report, a residual report, which has got residual area and residual volumes. Intermediate report, so intermediate's operations that occur prior to clear felling, after planting and prior to clear felling. Those come through there. And there's also an overhead sheet. There's a toolbar that's sitting up at the top. I don't know if it's displayed in there, but the toolbar lets you navigate around a little bit. And you can also kick off additional summaries. So if you want to summarize by specific crop types, you can do that. If you want to just summarize over the first rotation, up to the first clear fell and not the second rotation, you can do that. And there's also a button for generating cut variables. So you can actually see what's happened in the model down at the low level, at the variable level. So it's, it's pretty darn cool, actually. So the little green boxes there, basically just text, and they explain what you should enter on that sheet and what that current sheet that you're on is about, which is kind of like having the help menu built in, really. So this is what the SQL Server database looks like in behind. There's no problem information in here. There's nothing about the forest estate, the data that's sitting in here. This is just the solution table, so it's a set of relational tables. So if you really wanted to, you could generate your own little report thing, your own little SQL queries for generating the custom reports that you might be interested in. Oh, I clicked the wrong place. Oh. And these are the kind of reports that you get out. They're just tabular report there.
Tom?
Yeah.
You're not sharing. Yeah, no, you paused.
Oh, did I pause?
Yeah.
Oh, what do I click on?
The orange thing. The blue one. Resume start. Resume share.
Oh, where's that? Oh, there.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so it's a tabular report, and from that tabular report, it automatically generates these kind of graphs. You can change the style of graphs too. There's an option in one of the sheets for if you want stack bars or if you just want line things. You can kind of generate a report like this, which kind of shows you the sequence of harvesting. So at the moment, it's a bit of a manual process. You have to dump generate a CSV file and then feed it back in, kind of thing. I don't know how useful that is really, but it looks good, eh? So yeah, FOLPI-XL is great for this kind of little investigation. You can bring data in from different sources. I didn't say actually, yeah, there's integration with Atlas GeoMaster. We can bring areas in from Atlas GeoMaster. We can bring yields in from Yield Table Manager. That can come into one of those yellow sheets. Excel's great at reporting. Yeah, we use an industry modeler to build the problem, and that sort of creates reliability, I reckon. It's really quite a powerful thing, that adding extra constraints using that modeler. Yeah, I said there's great integration with other products, and the solutions are stored securely in SQL Server. So the default we normally use is we use local DB. So so it's just a little local DB database, a single user SQL database. So, and the reports and charts are auto-generated. So yeah, that's pretty much what FOLPI-XL is about. So it's a bit of a high-level overview, but it's a great little tool, though.
Thank you, John.
There is a question from Jennifer Park. Does this work with Excel for Microsoft 365?
Yep. Yeah, but it pays not to have your workbook sitting on OneDrive or SharePoint, because SharePoint does some weird things sometimes. Yeah. Cool. Sorry.
Okay, GeoMaster Mobile. Right. Google required us to update to Android 13 late last year. No, don't do that. Earlier this year, somewhere. Because if we didn't upgrade our GeoMaster Mobile for Android to Android 13, new people on Android 13 and would not be able to see GeoMaster Mobile to download. So we got forced to upgrade. Part of that required an upgrade to 64-bit Android. Previously it's 32-bit. And because of that, the SpatiaLite geodatabase, I couldn't find any libraries for 64-bit, so I had to convert our notes to SQLite, which is the same as what GeoMaster Mobile for iOS happens to use, so that's convenient. And I also ended up upgrading the encryption library for the for the database, and that required a new encryption method. So what I needed to do was, as well as the upgrade to Android, update the GeoMaster Mobile Manager to support all of this new stuff. And I'm going to demonstrate creating a mobile map package from ArcGIS Pro. This is just inbuilt standard ArcGIS Pro stuff, not something we've written. I'm going to export the GeoMaster Mobile database in a digital elevation mobile from ArcGIS Pro. I'm going to show you something that I think is pretty cool, and you administrators out there might find it useful too, and that's importing into GeoMaster Mobile for Android using a zip file. Because old version of GeoMaster Mobile, it was just root of the phone, GeoMaster, and that's where you dump your files. Because of this Android 13 upgrade, we've had to store our files in a nasty, deep structure that's not obvious for users to put stuff there. So this works quite nicely. This was done originally because one of our customers has locked down their devices using Microsoft Intune, and they couldn't even get to this new location. So we did this for them, and I think it worked well for all of you guys too. And then I'm demonstrate importing notes from GeoMaster Mobile into ArcPro. Save, Connor. So I have a project here with a single map. It has a base map, tile TPKX for those with really good eyesight, which is just a tile package generated from Arc Pro. Tile package from ArcGIS Desktop was a TPK, so it's just a new format. Either file type could have been used here. I have patch settings and some other layers in here. They are coming from different geodatabases. Unlike desktop, when you spit out a runtime geodatabase, it had to be from one geodatabase. With a mobile map package, you're not limited to this. So you can have multiple data sources now, which is good. And really easy, just get your map how you want it. Share, mobile map. I'm going to save to save it to file. Name. Whoops. I'm going to analyze it to see if all's good. It's good. I'm going to save it as a map package. And this is just inbuilt Esri feature, which I'm sure some of you have already had to play with. Done. So there's the mobile map package. Next, from GeoMaster, if you haven't already, go Utilities, Refresh Snapshots. GeoMaster Mobile uses the snapshot tables for reading, so I don't have to decode all the temporal stuff. So run Refresh Snapshots first. I've already done that. Then GeoMaster, if not already, go to Settings here and enable GeoMaster Mobile Tools. Otherwise, it won't be there. And then go Export. Say where you want it. Use your encryption key, or forest region or group or whatever. Next. Finish. Now, one thing I get with a lot of support is we get maps and GeoMaster database do not match up. Part of this file that's just been exported has a config table similar to what we have in Desktop and Pro, but it essentially says what the patch layer is, what the setting layer is, and what the link key and forest block setting and harvest area fields are. And having those not match what's actually in the map is what causes a bit of problem. So always use the same map you've used to export the map out as the one that you use when you're exporting your GeoMaster mobile database. So if we have a look there, it's spat out a credentials.dat, an Android database, an iOS database. Next, I'm going to load in digital elevation layer. There it is. And I'm going to go mobile, export DEM, which layer, that one, which area. Export that. Where to save it. Save, export. It's going to take a wee while. And I'm going to have to put a spinny thing here, I've decided, having tried this a few times in the week, and we're not sure it's actually doing anything for a while. So maybe before we release next week, we'll have a little spinny thing as well to show we're actually doing something. So what this does is just clips out that bit of digital elevation model and re-encodes it in a slightly more efficient manner than the default raster, so it takes up a bit less space.
Just while that's spinning around, just for your amusement, Lucia's been talking about having to convert to 64-bit Android. John was talking about converting stuff to 64-bit, and we were talking about getting my e-ticket manager and everything in the 64-bit. But John also referred to the fact we were using a VAX system back in the 80s. VAX was virtual address extension. Those are 64-bit computers that we were using in the 80s that finally our laptops and desktops are catching up to.
Well, yep, it's not fast. What else can I talk about?
Chat about stuff.
Yeah.
I was wondering about that Android layer that you can get with Windows 11 now that would allow you to run GeoMaster Mobile on your desktop if you really wanted to. I mean, I don't know why you want to, but
yep,
you could actually do it, couldn't you?
Windows 11 has the Android subsystem.
Yeah,
now.
there's Android subsystem.
Potentially we can run GeoMaster Mobile in there. I haven't tried.
That might be quite good if you're training or something like that.
Yeah. Or if you have a little Windows 11 tablet or something.
Or mobile.
Yep.
Yeah.
Possible. When I do get round to loading it onto the phone, be aware that you can only have one mobile map package loaded. It's an all or nothing thing. I've covered off using the same map we created the mobile map package, or if you're doing it from desktop still, the thing that you created your runtime geodatabase, make sure that's the same one that you use when you export out. We're done. Fantastic. So now we have credentials.dat, GeoMaster database, an iOS database, a mobile map package, a DEM, and DM metadata file. I'm going to select everything but the iOS database and add it to a zip file.
It's really big size, isn't it? It's very big.
Yep, and that's small for geospatial stuff, John. Thankfully, Android devices are coming with a reasonable amount of storage these days. I'm going to grab that zip file and copy it to just somewhere you can get to. In my case, the download folder on the Android phone. Now, on that phone, we've got GeoMaster, empty GeoMaster. It's installed from the Play Store this morning. Run the Files app. Go to Downloads. There's the zip file that I just copied across. I'm going to hold down on it and click Share. I'm going to say share it to GeoMaster. And this is a new little form you wouldn't have seen before. I'm going to put it in the Mail folder. Okay, and click Import.
So the reason is you have different regions with different data sets for different regions.
When I said you can have only one mobile map package loaded, you can have different folders with different mobile map packages though, so just one loaded at a time. And It's importing at the moment. It's busy extracting the mobile map package now. Little warning, this could take a while on older Android phones. It'll take a long time. On Christian's phone, which is modern, it just flies through. This one's in the middle.
Got a question from Paul Harrison.
Yep.
He says he hasn't looked at GeoMaster Mobile for a while. Does it have the capability for users to update activities in the field?
No.
No change there.
No change there. We'll talk about this on the road ahead.
Is there a sync process once back in the office? Well, it's
There's no, you can't.
we will
Yeah, yeah.
do demoing, John.
Okay.
Import complete. I have no idea why the progress bar didn't quite get all the way across. Oh well. Reload map. There it is, loaded. Hold down on a thing, just works. So really easy to load now, compared to, well, if you have a look on, we used to manually do this. You go internal storage, Android, data, go and find GeoMaster Mobile there, files, and put it all in there. So, and you need some of the files here in the top level, you need some down in the there. So it's an easier way of deploying. Hopefully some of you will appreciate that. Oh, and we also have a look somewhere over here. The elevation model that I pulled in as well. So, right. Yes.
Any way of telling who you're on Android or iOS when the data was updated, because you know it's a snapshot.
Oh.
Field staff have it and they don't know how old it is, and so they could be using lockdown presets.
Can you make note of that? Fantastic idea. No current way, but yeah. Imagine I've been out in the field, I've noticed some things, I've made some notes, and I've emailed them back to the office. I'm not going to do that here because I don't have email and all that on that phone. In utilities, switch projects. In utilities, import notes. Where did I save them to? Oh, where did I save them to? Where do I want to put them to? This can be a shared network drive, so people can share the notes. This is mainly for the photos. Finish. Right, import done. Click on it. Oop, no. Click on it. There's the note. We had a slip, a bad slip apparently. In fact, we have some photos, which happens to be straight outside the office door at work, because I'm not going to go find a slip. And this is some weeds, some gorse, or straight outside the office again. And here's me taking a walk around the office, recording a track, and we need to replant this area. Oh well, there'll be news to Andrew. And the obligatory photo outside the office door.
Looks like you walked through some rooms.
Yeah, GPS was still, yeah. And we have a polygon here, and that's a washed out road. And I was struggling outside the office door, so I took a picture of a washed out road on my computer screen. So that's GeoMaster Mobile. the iOS version also supports mobile map packages and TPKs. Does not currently support the zip file option, import option. I think that will be coming early next year. So, yep.
So any questions on mobile before we move on? How many people are using it?
A few. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll be covering off some more in the road ahead later. Right, SilviQC.
Want to go overview what it is for those who aren't?
Oh, yeah, I guess so. SilviQC is the quality control module for GeoMaster. Well, yeah, you need GeoMaster to have SilviQC. Has 8 modules, I think. Anything from survival surveys, pruning QCs, planting, block checks, heighting, spot mounting, lots. Did not talk to GeoMaster 64-bit GeoMaster, which is the one that runs with Arc Pro. So recently I've updated it to 64-bit. I've updated the Delphi version, that's the language that we use to write it in, to the same version that GeoMaster uses. For you that remember the last time we upgraded GeoMaster to 64-bit, I had to change all the grids because they weren't compatible. Well, I had to do the same for SilviQC. And I've also added the exporting of SilviQC assessments to GeoMaster. It's badly worded. I've added exporting of SilviQC assessments from GeoMaster Arc Pro. And I'm going to demonstrate creating an event in Arc Pro, adding an assessment to it, exporting it out to SilviQC, manually adding some measurements in SilviQC, and sending that summary back to GeoMaster. You shouldn't be there. All right, we're connected. I'll do a thinning. Well, I don't think you thin beyond that, but we'll just add it. Pretend you do. So there's the thinning event. Prepare assessment plots. Ooh, okay. Oh, I've done that wrong, haven't I? Oops.
What's the same 325?
Yeah, it can do that.
Glad you're not measuring. The assessment types, is it anywhere configuring it so that it knows what event you're doing, so it should know what assessment type it relates to?
You'd like to think so, but no.
So people pick the wrong assessment types normally at QC. Whether it's the filling or a pruning.
Yeah. Yeah, or survival or we have different types, maybe even listen to. I don't know.
They're all user-defined names that they don't have any meaning.
Right, once you've got your assessment up and or your assessment map up, you can go output the plot, save it to SilviQC. Where to save it? Yeah. Look there, yep. And it's a waist thin. If you're a multi-monitor, that would have popped up probably on top, but with all this munged together, it's popped up behind. I was just filling in some SilviQC values, and it's just saved it out to an SDI file. And for those that still use Fieldman for entering QC information, you could load that into Fieldman. And I don't have Fieldman handy, so I'm just going to fire up SilviQC. Go to waist thin. For some reason, very slow to start up on this laptop. Back at work, it's instantaneous, but some sort of a timeout happening. So, and there's the QC we've just created. And I'm just going to manually enter some values. Whoops. 14, 12. Right. 5, 4, 1. Okay. Okay, I'm putting in tree quality codes, and in fact, I am telling it there are 5 low pruned. There are 4. Oops. This came out of Fletcher's. I can't say I'm over the moon about their choice of codes, but and 120.
So you had, what were the 3 classes you've got there?
I've got low pruned, high pruned, and not pruned.
Oh, it's a shame that that thing doesn't code.
Yeah. Oops, that's too much. I'm putting DBH and height of our measure trees in. I'll enter one more and call it a day. SilviQC, this is not the recommended way of entering data. This is just how I need to do it here. Some clients, or one client, has written importer for Survey 123 for this, and we are contemplating, instead of everyone going out and coding up their own way of doing this, we are contemplating doing a Survey 123 importer. If this interests you, please contact us. That'll do. Once you've done that, you can run some reports over it to see if you're happy. And it's just telling me the underlying crop in GeoMaster didn't have a height age table assigned. So you can run reports, and when you're happy, you can send that back to GeoMaster. It's telling me that I haven't measured everything. Well, I'm not going to type it all in at the moment, so we'll just send it as is. Again, they complained about no height age table. and that's sent it off to GeoMaster, and we can open that event in GeoMaster and look at the assessment, and there's the assessment of that QC in GeoMaster. Right, so QC, that's all I needed to do there. Any questions? Nope. Right, my shortest demo, Yield Table Manager. Just to show, I don't think we've demoed this before, just to show you how it works. With GeoMaster Arc Pro. Right, I'm going to pick a stand, edit it, go yield, Yield Table Manager Dynamic. Select a yield cube.
So that we don't can
That,
interrogate
yep,
your
that's,
table manager at that stage.
Yep.
Those you cubes up.
Yep, so it's, that dialogue you had up was asking Yield Table Manager, what yield cubes have you got? I selected one. It only had one cutting strategy, so it selected that as well. And if I click OK now, there is the yield cube connected to the stand in GeoMaster. You can have a look at the yield table itself from GeoMaster as well. This takes a while, it fires it up in Excel.
So is this using Calm?
This is using Calm. And there it is there. So that's the whole yield cube. Excel. So that was a really brief demo. Any questions on that front? All right, road ahead. So far, you've seen that we've rewritten the GeoMaster extension for desktop as a Pro add-in. It's taken us 3 years, about that. And we're pretty much done there. Yes, there's going to be tweaks and optimizations and bug fixes and all of that, but largely we're done. Next step, we plan to rewrite GeoMaster, or technically the GM server, or from your point of view, that, in .NET. One of the reasons is we'd like to have a web interface to GeoMaster, and this does not support it. We've tried a few times over the years, does not work. So we're going to do a .NET backend of business logic. Over the top of that, some .NET forms like you see in our Arc Pro add-in, but also have the ability to have a web service and something like Experience Builder widget that can talk to that. Hence, Guri here. We're very pleased to have you. So,
Experience Builder as the development environment within ArcGIS Pro.
Yeah. No, it's for web. Experience Builder, for those that don't know it, is replaces Web App Builder. If you don't know what that is, it's a way of non-coders of developing geospatial websites, drag and drop. But on top of that, us developers can write widgets with us. And I think I demoed a really rudimentary one probably about 4 years ago. And then we got our development path changed to do the Pro first. So, yeah. This rewrite of the GeoMaster server is multi-year. I do mean multi-year. And when we switch over to it serving ArcGIS Pro, it's going to be at a complete switch over. There's not going to be in a year's time you can use half of it. That won't be the case. It will be when we're done, we'll switch it over and nothing in between. So you won't be seeing much at the next user group meeting on that. But incrementally, we can add web capabilities to what we're doing, and that can be gradually phased in. And so next year, you'll be seeing Experience Builder, or possibly, we're yet to decide, it could just be in the JavaScript API. We're going to lean on Guri here on the best way of doing things. But you'll be seeing a web GeoMaster probably this time next year in its rudimentary forms.
So it's the desktop one that'll take years to replace, and that'll be a complete replacement. Whereas the web interface, we can incrementally add more and more features over.
Yep. And this web interface, as well as being for desktop, I can imagine it being used in tablets where you've got coverage, phones where you've got coverage. So that means you can go, oh, I need to prune this in a week's time. I don't know. I'm not a forester.
Yeah. Can you do this in the field?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, this, or I can sign off this job in the field. All of those sort of things, assuming you have coverage. There is talk of Starlink. I wouldn't hold your breath quite yet. Initial offering of Starlink, this is on One, which is ex-Vodafone, will be SMS only, and it's going to be years before we get any major bandwidth, I think. And even then, it's going to cost, I suspect. So, yes, coverage in the forest is coming, but not anytime soon, would be my gut feel.
I've got a question from Scott Andrew.
Yep.
Is there a date when ArcMap will be discontinued?
Okay, yes, I can answer that. I went to the Esri user meeting a few months ago in Auckland, had a chat to the Eagle people who are the Esri distributors in New Zealand. ArcMap 8.2 or whatever it is, 3, goes to mature support. I think it's March next year, which means no new features or anything, bug fixes only, I think. Couple of years after that, end of life effectively, but they will still be handing out licenses. So if it works for you, you can keep using it, but that's a dangerous place to be. I think that's 2026. So you need realistically to be off desktop by 2026, if not sooner, because you need, there is a learning curve for Pro. Or whatever. So that's what's happening in the desktop market.
So the .NET migration,
yes,
that's a multi-year project.
Yes.
But are you saying that as that's done, there's certain aspects of it, even though it's not rolled out in life, you can use that for the web?
I think so.
Does that mean that we'd be able to prioritise what part of the .NET's done so that the tools we want in a web product could be built earlier rather than later? Does that make sense?
Yes, I know what you're asking. With the application of money, I think you could change our priorities. But we've had a discussion with Olsen's on this. Okay, if we talk a little bit about this. Yeah, Olsen's would like to not go to Pro and have a web thing for most of their users, their foresters, rather than having to outlay a lot of money on high-end laptops with GPUs and stuff. I don't think we're going to be able to meet the time frame you would like, which is mid next year for what you want, unfortunately, even with another resource coming on board. I'm afraid it's going to take. We've taken 3 years to just do the Pro add-in, so it's going to take a while, I'm afraid, Richard.
No, that's fine.
And unless you send us a lot more money than I think you're capable of.
But the question Richard asked is, can we have some influence on the priorities?
Yes, you
and that's
can.
a reasonable question, I think. We're open to industry saying these are the features that need to be there, and as long as they don't depend on stuff that's not there, i.e. they're a logical progression to get to that point, then we're very open to having a discussion.
I mean, we don't run the show here, but I don't know what the rest of that user group, what their priorities are, but I don't know, some sort of survey, some sort of questionnaire that might help drive what people are looking for. I don't know.
I think we can definitely do that. My concern is everyone's in a different position, and there's going to be however many customers we have, different positions. This is the problem.
No, that's cool.
Yeah.
I think about adding features as well as like when we're doing this rewrite, it's the best time to suggest things. We're not really going to get a whole lot of chance to add new things or make wild changes after we're moving through development and stuff.
Yeah. Some of the thoughts I'm having are at the moment when you do a reshape or something, you don't really know what that looked before and after. Is we might take a snapshot of the before and the after, or somewhere, and stash it in as a into the database as a archive of, you know, in the area change record is actually what the area was before or after looked like, sort of thing. But we're not committing to doing or not doing, but just things I'm toying with at the moment. So there will be, it will not be GeoMaster as you know it, I think, what pops out the other end. Definitely for the web, it is not going to be a big thing with a ginormous tree on the left-hand side, because that would be really inefficient to squirt across the web and stuff like that. It's going to be more, for the web, it's going to be more focused. You know, forest this, drop down, forest compartment stand, show a list of events, click that event, and then you have another thing that it deals to just dealing with that event or creating a new event. It's going to be a more focused interface, I think, which I think will be good. But I'm not committing to it being exactly like that. But these are things we're thinking about, is what this will look like. We don't know yet. And I think there will be some prototyping, and we'll be showing you things and getting feedback before we commit to. It may just be wireframes out to the industry, so no coding at all, just effectively drawn things for ideas. Will this work for you? Will this not? So yes, there will be more participation in that. But don't think that GeoMaster the web looks like desktop.
No.
Does not work that way.
No, I wouldn't want it to either.
Yeah.
I had a bit of a reply from Harrison. He says it's retransitioned to ArcGIS Pro. You cannot buy ArcMap from March 2026. All ArcMap licenses transitioned to Arc Pro 2026.
Okay. Well,
so it sounds like 2026 is the big
Eagle was saying that licenses would still be available, not for purchase, but your licenses wouldn't die, or if you gave them money, you'd still have a running ArcMap beyond that point.
For existing clients, but not for new ones.
You haven't been able to buy new licenses. New customers haven't been able to buy new licenses for a year or so now. So right, GeoMaster Mobile. Not thinking of spending too much on that. I will probably add ArcGIS Online support and some way of note synchronization, because yes, I know it's painful to get stuff onto mobile, and I know it's really painful to get stuff off of mobile after you've done it. So something in that sphere will be done. Fieldman, anyone that's still using it, I will support that until all your Allegros that can run the existing Fieldman are dead. Carolyn. Yes, this could be quite some time. Integral is has plans to, I think is a better word, to write a replacement to acquire, which is something we've sort of dumped, I think, for PSP. There are no further plans. I'm not saying that we won't do it. It's just that we haven't done any detailed planning beyond that point. So there's plans for a PSP data capture that will run on Android and iOS. But beyond that point, I can't comment because we just haven't planned for it. So SilviQC, as I spoke to earlier, if there is interest, a Survey 123 import capability. If you're interested, get onto us. Further down the track, once we have a GeoMaster web, we're going to need a web version of SilviQC, so you can enter your quality control stuff. So that's planned. Yield table manager. Well, you're going to need to be able to select your yield cube. You're going to need probably a web API in the short term to be able to at least bring up a thing to say select that and get your yield. Further down the track, possibly a web interface for a full-blown web interface for yield table manager. And that's me.